They're the authors of the best-selling mocktail recipe book, Drinking for Two, and now they have a new book you'll definitely want to check out. It's called Mocktail Party. Diana Licalzi and Kerry Benson are best known as the Sober Dietitians, and they're sharing their passion for mocktail making and what inspired their sober living journeys. Plus, Diana and Kerry are offering tips for mindful drinking and more. This is Advocate Now. Well, Diana and Kerry, you both were first introduced to sober living when you decided to do an alcohol-free challenge. This was back in 2020. What inspired you to take that step and try it out? Kerry, let's start with you.
Sure. So first of all, thank you so much for having us on. We're excited to be here and talk about sober curious living. So it's kind of a long story, but it started out, we actually wrote a mocktail recipe book called Drinking for Two that's aimed at people that are pregnant, trying to conceive, or breastfeeding, and who want to avoid alcohol, but still enjoy a drink that is fun and festive. So we wrote that book. We got a lot of positive feedback, started getting more aware and involved in the sober, curious, mindful drinking movements. And through that, we had the opportunity to write our second book, Mocktail Party, that was just kind of aimed at the general population. As we were writing that book, it was during the early days of COVID, actually. And between writing the book and reading the literature on how alcohol affects health, and then just, exploring the world of mocktails more, getting introduced to more non-alcoholic beverage products that are on the market, we just thought it would be really interesting to try an alcohol-free challenge ourselves and see where things went from there. So we didn't follow any of the traditional dry January or dry July things. We just sort of started on a random day in August of 2020 and did it for a month. And definitely from my standpoint, my relationship with alcohol has been forever impacted by that short month that we did. I don't know if Diana has the same experience.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it was only supposed to last a month. Mine lasted a whole year. I loved it so much. I just felt so much better personally. And I knew I was reaping so many great health benefits that I just wanted to keep going. And it ended up being a whole year that I just stopped drinking.
And it's so amazing what you've built since then, because you've created this very successful brand. Of course, you're known as the Sober Dietitians. You make these delicious mocktails that are non-alcoholic. But looking back at your own journeys with sobriety, what were some of the physical or mental changes that you noticed when first cutting out alcohol?
Yeah. So for me, I definitely noticed, number one, better sleep. So I was just sleeping more soundly at night. I noticed also just improvements in my overall skin too. Like my skin just was glowing, really. I feel like it cleared up pretty quickly. Not that I had acne or anything before, but definitely struggled. Everyone struggles a little bit with their skin. And I just felt like I saw a pretty significant improvement there. And then I just noticed too, some biomarkers, health biomarkers. As a dietitian, I love to nerd out on that stuff. And I saw cholesterol even improved, blood sugars improved too. So it was really cool to see all those health changes.
And Kerry, for you?
Yeah, definitely improvements in my skin as well. Again, I didn't have a lot of struggles with acne or anything, but I think I had some redness in my skin that kind of went away. And then really just feeling good and feeling empowered. I actually really enjoyed being the person who wasn't drinking. So, I like to drive and be in control. So it felt really empowering to be able to kind of have that role as the designated driver. If we ever went out, I never felt uncomfortable walking home because I knew I had my wits about me. And then now things are kind of different as a new mom. I'm glad that I had that journey exploring my relationship with alcohol when I did, to prepare me for motherhood, because motherhood is, especially new motherhood, he's 8 weeks old today. So it's a really stressful time dealing with a newborn, and I feel really grateful to have kind of worked on my mental health and how ways to cope with stress that don't revolve around alcohol as I'm entering motherhood.
Well, sober living is definitely on the rise right now, but we are still very much living in an alcohol obsessed culture. And I think everyone has different relationships with alcohol, but would you say it's still important that we all explore and re-examine what that relationship looks like from time to time?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think based on my experience with that alcohol-free challenge, one of the things is it just made me really aware of how many external influences there are that kind of drive you to feel like you should drink alcohol in certain settings, and if you don't, that you're abnormal and that you have to kind of justify why you're not doing that. So yeah, I think it's a great opportunity, even if you do, like a week or but whatever you feel like you can handle, just swapping out some um, alcoholic beverages with non-alcoholic beverages, alternating your drinks with water, whatever you can do to kind of cut back and then just sort of think about like, how is this drink making me feel? Do I like how it's making me feel? Why did I get this drink in the first place? Did I want it for the taste? Did I want it for how the alcohol makes me feel? Did I do it to cope with being in a social setting where I feel uncomfortable? Just kind of digging deep into that, I think, can really tell you so much. And then you can kind of make an informed choice on like, do I really want to drink in this moment?
Right.
Yeah. And just to add to that from a personal experience too, when we decided to do this alcohol challenge, the alcohol-free challenge, it was during the pandemic. And I think a lot of people were turning to alcohol more during that time because, people were nervous about what was going to happen. People didn't have to go to work. People were at home a lot more. And I definitely noticed that I was drinking more wine specifically. And it made me definitely reevaluate my relationship with alcohol. It's like, why am I turning towards wine? What am I using this in place of? I definitely felt like I was using it for a stress coping mechanism. And it's like, okay, wait, if we are using alcohol for that, why is it that we are? And it's not necessarily going to alleviate stress, right? Maybe it helps in the moment, but long term, it's not going to improve our health by any means. And so it definitely made me reevaluate that relationship I was having with wine at the time. And going completely sober for that whole year it forced me to find other coping mechanisms for stress that have still helps me today.
And speaking of wine, I want to talk about what many are calling the mommy wine culture. It's basically a lighthearted normalization of drinking as a way to cope with life stress. We see it very often, since the 2000s, though, research has shown that alcoholism in women is on the rise. So how do you think that mommy wine culture plays a role in that?
I mean, like you said, you see it everywhere now, from Etsy, things on Etsy that are being sold to memes on Instagram. Like I think I just saw one that it said on a wine glass that a wine glass is mom's sippy cup, right?
Mhm.
And then I also had recently seen one that was a box wine is mom's juice box. And I think it just really gives the impression that you need wine to be able to cope with motherhood. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. Carrie and I are both new moms. Carrie has, when you said, an 8-week-old
Yeah,
now.
today.
Congratulations.
And I have a 9-month-old, and I couldn't imagine being hungover and trying to be fully present for my
Mhm.
son. You can't be a fully present mother if you're dealing with a hangover. And so I do think it is a major problem, and it does give that impression that motherhood is too hard and that you need to turn to alcohol to alleviate some of those hardships, which couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah, and just to add to that, the kind of the next layer to that, obviously our children aren't really internalizing those messages yet, but at some point, your children absorb everything that you're putting out there. So if they're seeing those messages, then they think, oh, okay, my mom is stressed by me and they need something to, it just kind of is a weird messaging for them to be able to internalize. So like Diana was saying, I feel grateful that, I've learned other coping strategies to deal with stress personally, so that I'm not turning to alcohol to deal with motherhood.
Well, I love what you both are doing. Thank you so much for having this conversation with us today. And everyone, make sure to check out Diana and Kerry's new mocktail book, Mocktail Party, available now. Thank you both again.
Thanks so much.
I'm Sonia Baghdadi. Thanks so much for watching and advocating. For more stories and content like this, just head to advocate.com or advocatechannel.com.